Okay, everyone says that you need to buy real estate if you want to make money, and apparently there's a number of ways of making money in real estate. False. There's 5 different ways that you actually make money in real estate, which means that when you participate and you build an investment portfolio, you don't get paid one way. You get paid 5 different ways. And in today's video, I'm gonna share those straight from my book, The Straight Path to Real Estate Wealth, where I'm gonna share with you the #1 strategy for investing in real estate and the 5 different ways that it pays you.
One shot, now the future is yours. Go!
Now hold the phone. I know what you might be thinking. Okay, Kris, if I invest with real estate, maybe it is gonna pay me 5 different ways, but doesn't it take money to make money? Not true. When I wrote this book, it was my way of sharing with you and everyone that was asking me how I took $3,300 that I had worked hard to save when I was a college kid and I was broke and I had no money, and I turned it into $1.6 million, a portfolio of 25 homes. And that's when people became really curious. They're like, wait a second, you house hacked and found a way to build this real estate portfolio and it only took you $3,300? And on top of that, those 25 homes 4.5 years later, we're paying you $12,000 a month residually. Now this is interesting, and I wrote a book because people say there's no such thing as a dumb question, but I kept getting asked the question over and over again, how did you do it? I'm like, man, I must be the idiot because I haven't written a book on it. And when I wrote this, it was my way of saying, hey, if you're interested in what I'm doing, just get the book for free and let me show you exactly what it is. By the way, the book in the link below is actually for free. All you have to do is cover shipping. But what I'm gonna do today is I'm gonna give you the shortcut and I'm gonna answer the question, okay, Kris, when you do this real estate strategy, how do you get paid 5 different ways? The first thing I want you to understand is that there are 30 different major real estate strategies. You've probably heard of flipping. I buy a house low, I sell a house high, I make the money in the middle. Or maybe you've heard of multifamily. It's like, oh yeah, I could buy like a complex with like 100 homes or 12 homes and then I'd have all these doors and I'd collect rents on all of them. Or maybe you've heard of development. Like, oh yeah, I buy land and then I get the land ready and I sell a bunch of lots that someone's gonna build houses on and go vertical. Well, there's all these strategies, and for you to understand the 5 different ways of making money, let me first make sure you understand the single-handed way that you'll make more money in real estate than anything else. And it's a strategy that takes you the least time, the least effort, the least risk, and it does make the most money. And it's called a lease option. In my book, I call it compassionate financing. It's a strategy where you buy a house and instead of just renting it out, you do what's called a rent-to-own program, or it's a lease option, a lease with an option to purchase. And that basically means instead of just renting it out to a family and every year having turnover and then they kind of do some wear and tear on the carpet and paint and then I re-rent it out again and 30 years later on a 30-year mortgage, it's all paid off, but the house is kind of old, it's kind of in shambles. There's technically a strategy that makes more than twice as much money than a rental. And it is a lease with an option to purchase, or what I call compassionate financing. When I buy a house, I put a bunch of signs up in the yard that say rent to own. So they call that phone number, and when they talk to me, they're really curious. They're like, what is this rent to own thing? I basically invite them out to the house, see if it's a good fit, and then I say, well, you're gonna give me a $3,000, $5,000, $7,000, $10,000 non-refundable down payment, and then you're gonna pay rents that are a little bit higher than normal rents, but every time you make your payment on time, I'm gonna credit some of that back to you when you finally go to buy the house. And then you can live there for 2 or 3 or 4 years or whatever, and then finally buy it. So you get to take ownership today instead of just renting it. It's your house for all intents and purposes, and then later you get to go and buy it. And you might be wondering, Kris, how is that twice as profitable? Well, there's a number of reasons. I collect a deposit up front, I have above average rents, I don't have to do any repairs, they're actually getting the house paid off, and then eventually they're gonna buy it. And I don't have realtors involved. And so when you really do the math, it's like, wow, that really does make a ton more money, more than double of a rental. So the strategy is amazing. And again, with the link below, you can grab a copy of this book for free. But what I want to do in this video now is I want to share with you the 5 different ways that this strategy is going to pay you. All right, the first of 5 profit centers is what I call discount equity. You see, when you buy a house and it's listed for $250,000, what happens if it's worth $300,000 and you get it for $250,000? Essentially, you're getting it $50,000 below market. And check out what I've got in there. 10, 20, 30, 40. This is $50,000 of cash. This is discount equity. It means that when I buy the house, because I bought it below the market, I'm actually buying it with equity. Now, if I bought it at $300,000, I might have to wait a number of years before I built up $50,000 of equity. But if I do it on the purchase, I walk into that $50,000. And even though I don't get paid that money up front, when I sell the house, I am going to get paid that money. And so discount equity is a way to basically skip years of building up equity and advancing it to yourself today. The second profit center is what's called positive cash flow. You see, my renter is paying me $2,000 a month, but the mortgage and all of my expenses are $1,500 a month. So if I bring in $2,000 every month and I have to pay out $1,500, that means that there's $500 left over every single month. That is cash flow, and because I'm receiving it, it is a positive cash flow. And so you think, okay, well, if that family's gonna live there for a few years, $500 every month for 12 months, that's an extra $6,000 that goes in my pocket. Now, I have $50,000 of instant equity that came discounted off of purchasing the house. And on top of that, I'm making an extra $6,000 each and every year. The third profit center is what is called a down payment. In other words, if a family wants to move into this home that is like a rent to own, a lease with an option to purchase, my lease might be $2,000 a month, but the separate agreement, the option to purchase says, well, you've got to give me some money to have the right to be able to buy that house. And if they want to give me a really high rent, I might ask for a very small down payment, like $3,000. Or if they want the rent to be a little lower, I might ask for $7,000 or $10,000 on that down payment. Just like if they were to go to a bank and buy a house, they have to put some money down to show the bank that they're serious and that they have some skin in the game. If I'm the investor and I'm seller financing this house to them, I want the exact same thing. I want to know that they're going to move in, they're going to take care of the house, that they're going to make their payments on time. And what really motivates someone to do that if they have some money on the line? You see, if they give me $7,000 of a down payment, they're going to have that come off the purchase price down the road when they buy it, and there's no way to refund that. They can't get that money back. It's not like in a rental when you do like a deposit of like the first and last month's rent. That's $7,000 that from day one I get to keep. And you better believe that is a third profit center. And it's an incentive for them to keep their nose clean. Even though this isn't a technical profit center, I'm gonna throw it in as a bonus. Technically, you're also getting paid through something called principal reduction. You see, you're outsourcing the house getting paid off, not by you, but by the renters or the people doing the lease option. And so every single month that they make their payment to you, and every month you pay your mortgage, a part of the money you receive goes towards the interest on the mortgage, the loan, but a small part goes towards the principal reduction, meaning I'm actually paying the house down. And so for the 5 years or so that a family might live there, before someone buys it, they literally can pay thousands upon thousands of dollars off that house. And when they go to buy the house, I'm also going to realize that money. So I'm bringing it up because the down payment is definitely a profit center, but so is the principal reduction. The fourth benefit is what is called appreciation. Over the last 65 years, the average house in America appreciates 4.65%. So for example, let's say that the house is worth $250,000. If it's in a market where it's appreciating 5% a year, that's $12,500. That means that next year the house isn't worth $250,000, it's worth $262,500. And the next year it's gonna go up another $12,500, but because it compounds, it's probably more like $13,000, which means that over 5 years, that $250,000 house is probably gonna go up $50,000, $60,000. And the reason why that's important is because when the person living in the house says, we're ready to buy it, we're gonna get an appraisal on the home, and because it had time to appreciate, it's now gone up in value, and that appraisal will determine the purchase price, and then we're gonna remove their down payment and any other credits that I'm giving them, but ultimately, I'm the one that is also taking advantage of that appreciation while I'm holding onto the home. This ends up being one of the biggest sources of ROI, return on investment, for buying the house in the first place. And the fifth major profit center is what is called the tax benefits. You see, even though you're doing a rent to own and they're living in the house and they're mimicking home ownership until they can buy it, technically you own it, which means you get the write-offs. Now, a house can be depreciated over 27 and a half years. So for example, let's go back to this $250,000 house. If you divide that by 27 and a half years, it means that every year you have roughly $9,000 of write-offs. So remember the $6,000 of positive cash flow? Because I have $9,000 of write-offs, that $6,000 of positive cash flow, I don't owe any taxes on that. That's actually tax-free money. But then there's a remainder of $3,000 that will count against my income. If I have a job and I make $80,000 a year, now it'll look like I only make $77,000 a year. So every time you buy a home, your income goes up with positive cash flow that is tax-free, and your ordinary income goes down because guess what? You have an extra write-off that you get to pass along. For the first 7 years that I owned real estate, I didn't pay any taxes because I kept buying so much real estate that even though my income was going up, all of the write-offs were canceling it. What's so great about the strategy that I'm giving you for free in the link below with this book is that those 25 homes each had about $500 of positive cash flow, which meant that I was collecting passively $12,500 every single month. That gave me the confidence to quit my job. After all, my job was paying me something similar. After all, I had to work for that money at my job. I had to work 40 or 50 hours a week to get paid that money. But with real estate, I actually didn't need to. It took me maybe a couple hours a week, and that was it. The rest of it really didn't take any additional time. So it was weird. All of a sudden, I was making some really fantastic money, but I didn't have to give my time for it. And that's probably why I love this strategy the most. It's great that it has minimal risk, and it has a ton of profit, and it's very easy to execute. But what's really great is that it also takes the least amount of time so that you can use your time for living the life that you want. Now, I went on from 25 homes to buy 100 and then hundreds of homes, and then I kept on going. But this book will document how a person literally with no money and no credit can start with nothing, leverage the number one strategy in real estate, and get off to the races to their journey, your journey of financial freedom. Click the link below. Let me get you a copy of this book for free. Kris, I understand what you're saying about this buy and hold strategy being the most profitable, but I've also heard you can make really big money doing wholesaling, like flipping paper. Like I identify a deeply discounted house, and instead of buying it and holding onto it, I just basically flip it to someone else without picking up a tool or a hammer or anything, and I can make $10,000, $20,000, $100,000. That is a real strategy. And if you want to know the ins and outs of how to wholesale real estate, click right here and let me show you that strategy as well.